Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Widows. And what Widows is essentially about is we center on these four different women, and basically all of their husbands are involved in this gang, and basically, everything's kind of it's going fine for them until one day when all of their husbands are in fact unfortunately killed in this heist, basically. And basically throughout the rest of the film they have to try to get over that, but things become even more complicated when one of the widows, Veronica, is met with this this settlement where she learns that her husband stole about $15 million from this politician that is now running for office, and basically if she doesn't deliver him this money within 24 hours, then she is going to be in some really deep shit. So basically her and all the other widows decide to team up in an effort to, wrap things up and basically finish the work that their husband started, but also try to, move on from this difficult time in their lives. So, Widows overall, I was hyped for this movie. I mean, out of all the films that are coming out, this was one of the essentials for me. It was one of those films where I didn't care how I see it, I just knew I needed to see it. I mean, between the cast, and now, of course, I can say Steve McQueen because I've seen 12 Years a Slave, but also just all the brave reviews of this film. I mean, this was one that I was so hyped to see. I was really hoping it wouldn't disappoint, and I'll just say it right now, Widows absolutely did not disappoint me. This is a phenomenal film that I think is truly one of the best heist films of the entire decade, and we're just getting into right now, starting off with the cast. And honestly, with a cast like this, with so many star-studded names and so many great performances, I mean, where do you really begin? I'll say right now, everyone here is at the top of their game. Everyone just absolutely kills it in this movie. There really isn't anyone here that I don't think is just acting their ass off. But I really got to talk about Viola Davis first, who is phenomenal in this film. I mean, of course she's phenomenal, but I really loved her performance as Veronica. This is a very raw and emotional performance, but it also is one that has a lot of considerable depth behind it. Viola Davis is one of those actors where, sure, she can scream, she can give a really lengthy monologue, but what you can just see in her face, the pain and the trauma that she's gone through, what this really ends up doing to her. Suddenly, one moment she has this really great life with her husband, and she's rich and things like that, and there's this very lavish house that they're in, and then suddenly that is all just taken away from her, and seeing her have to undergo that, the transformation that she goes through, and how adamant she is at continuing her husband's work. I mean, she just absolutely nails it here. I really love what she did. I think she very much anchors the film, and I would be very surprised if she doesn't at the very least get nominated for Best Actress, because she is just phenomenal here. I loved what she did in this film. Someone who actually does come pretty close to her, though, is Elizabeth Debicki, who I really loved here. Now, I've never really thought all that much of her. She's popped up in smaller roles like The Tale and things like that earlier this year, which I really liked her in, but this is without a doubt the greatest work I've seen from her. I mean, not only is her character really well written, in fact, I think out of all of the characters in the film, she by far has the most amount of character development for sure. I mean, she goes through a really big arc, but she also really stands out in the scenes that are a lot of fun. I mean, this is someone who I think very well could carry a movie. It's one of those actresses where it's like, where has she really been? I think after this film, we're going to be seeing her in a lot more. I think she absolutely killed it here. Same with Michelle Rodriguez. I really loved her as well in this film, and all four of the women, Viola Davis, Michelle Rodriguez, Elizabeth Debicki, and Cynthia Erivo, they all work very well together. You really do see the chemistry between them. You can understand why they want to work together, and I was very impressed with their performances throughout this film. But someone else I really have to highlight that is outside of the Widows is Daniel Kaluuya, who, holy shit, I mean, I adored his performance in Get Out. I think he was really great in that film, and that was a really great starting performance from him. This is the performance, though, that solidifies him as the phenomenal actor that he is. I mean, seeing him in Get Out, the kind of person that he portrays, basically like the everyman in that sense, and then what he has to do in Widows, it doesn't feel like the same actor. it doesn't feel like this is the same person from Get Out. I mean, he completely transformed himself into this role. His role in this film is so terrifying to the point where if he even looks at you, you're terrified. I mean, this is a guy who, he is so adamant about making sure that things go right for his brother, and he will do whatever he can to make sure that things are going his brother's way. Even if he has to do some really deadly things, he will kill you if he needs to, he will get that information out of you, and he has at least 2 or 3 scenes in this film that I could honestly see becoming a classic. I mean, he is just fantastic here. I'd love to see him get a Best Supporting Actor nomination. I don't know if that's in the conversation, but I'd love to see it happen, and I think it damn well should. He, for sure, was one of the best performances of this entire film. I think up there with Davis and Debicki for me, and I really loved what he did here. For me, at least, you know, I've really loved a lot of villains this year, but out of all the villains I've seen, I would have to say I think Kaluuya is probably the best villain of the entire year. I really love what he did here. The rest of the cast here also is outstanding. I mean, Colin Farrell, as usual, gives a really great performance. Robert Duvall is just crushing it in this movie. I loved what he had to do here. Carrie Coon, you know, you didn't really see her in the trailers, but she is in the movie more than I expected, and finally, a film that actually utilizes her well. I mean, it is about time, and she really brings it here. She really does kill it. I really love what she did here as well. I also really love Jacki Weaver, and also Liam Neeson. I mean, you know, a lot of people have been complaining that, oh, Liam Neeson just plays the same role in everything. He's basically just playing Liam Neeson. Let me tell you right now, this is a very different role than Neeson has ever played before, and I really love what he did here. I can't really get too much into his character, but what he ends up going through and the type of person that he is in the film was not something I was expecting, and I really love what he did here. Really, this entire cast really does bring it. It's very hard to find one, you know, weak link in the cast because there just simply isn't one. I think everyone, like I said, is truly at the top of their game, and I really thought everyone just really brought it here. For sure, for me, I think maybe the best ensemble cast of this entire year. But now I really want to get to the directing and the writing, because here's the thing with the directing from Steve McQueen. The thing is with this film is that Steve McQueen is very much directing it, but I think Gillian Flynn is very much at the helm. And sure, she did write the film, which we'll get to a little bit later, but a lot of this film felt a little different from other films I've seen from Steve McQueen. Now, keep in mind, I've only seen like one film from him, so that might not be the most accurate view of it, but from what I understand, this film is vastly different from other films that McQueen has done. However, it's also not, because what McQueen does so well is he does take this seriously. He does a good job at making sure this is a heist film, but he's also not afraid to have some fun with it. He's not afraid to throw in some comedy in there, throw in some little dosage of humor, and I actually thought it blended in pretty seamlessly. It made a lot of sense as to why these characters would be joking around. There's some really funny scenes in the film. One scene in particular with Debicki that I think is among the funniest scenes I've seen all year. I mean, he did a really great job. There are parts of this movie that makes me wish this is the film that Ocean's 8 could have been, and I think it's definitely, you know, I think it's definitely some of his best directing yet. I really love what he did here, and again, I love that he was a little bit out of his element here. It's a different type of film than what he has done before, and I was very impressed by that. But going over to the writing, like I said, this very much does feel like a Gillian Flynn film. You get that sense of mystery, you get that suspense that you get in her films. I mean, there are moments in this film where you do feel like you're watching something like Gone Girl or Sharp Objects, and not something like 12 Years a Slave or Shame or other work that McQueen has done, and that really, I think, is attributed to Flynn's writing here, which is just phenomenal. I mean, she knows how to craft a great thriller, and she does a damn good job at doing so. But the other thing this film, I think, does so well is it's able to infuse McQueen's social commentary. It's still there. There is still a lot of social commentary within this film. And when it comes to the planning of the heist, I mean, it is very interesting. The film actually sets it up pretty well. It gets you to care for these characters, and then it eventually gets into the heist. And some people might be disappointed because the heist really doesn't happen until the third act of this movie, but that's because it's a much more character-driven film. It's much more concerned about the impact it has on these characters and how these characters are able to overcome what they're really going through. Every single one of these women, they're dealing with something something internally. They're dealing with something, they're dealing with something that is directly related to their husband, and it's kind of plaguing them. You see how it's really affecting their life and the way they're able to overcome it, especially Debicki's character, I thought was really great here. I think the writing was so spot on in that regard, and it really gets you to care about the heist. You understand why this is so important for them and why the heist is basically, the one thing that they all really need to pull off to better themselves. And I like the way that was done here. A lot of films they just try to treat as a fun, generic heist movie, but this film is much more concerned with the damage that this has, but also I think how it also helps our characters progress and what it's really going to benefit for them, and I thought it was very well written in that regard. But something else this film does so well that I was very surprised about is that it is actually able to infuse some of Steve McQueen's social commentary in here, because sure, this is primarily a heist film, a character-driven one, all of that at that, but it also is a film that is very much commentating on American politics of today. And you may think that that may turn a lot of people off because, oh, people are tired of hearing about politics, but let me just assure you right now that it is done in the way it's done in this film is not how I was really expecting it to be. The political stuff, it doesn't feel shoved in your face. It makes sense why it's in the film. It has a very specific purpose here, and I do think it is very well told. I really did enjoy a lot of the political stuff in this film, especially when it comes to the race between Colin Farrell and Tyree Henry. Each one of them, they have very different reasons for why they want to run for this position, why they want to be in the council or whatever, and I thought it was a very good idea on, getting a nice window into both of their characters, and that's something that I really did enjoy a lot. But the film also talks about things like police brutality and racism, and again, it doesn't do it in a way where it feels forced. It is purposeful in the film. It definitely does have a place here, and I love the way McQueen was able to do that, because you would think that he would treat this as just a straight-up heist film, but no, he is able to have that social commentary in there that we know him for, and I was very impressed with the way that was handled in this film. That being said, in regards to that political subplot, while I do enjoy it a lot, I do actually think it's a little underwritten. For Tyree Henry, and Daniel Kaluuya, no, absolutely not. There's a really good motivation there. You understand why they want to do it. And it's not like you don't with Colin Farrell, but I just felt there was a lot of, development with that character that was just a little bit unexplored. And if the film was maybe a little longer, they could have maybe delved a little bit more into it. We do get the sense that, his father is someone who is the alderman, and he wants to follow his father's footsteps, but I just felt that we could have maybe done a little bit more with who Colin Farrell really was, and especially towards the end of the film, I just didn't feel his character had the most satisfying conclusion. I think they could have done a little bit more with him here and there. What we get is really great. I enjoyed the interplay between him and Robert Duvall for sure, but I just felt that we could have maybe had a little bit more with Farrell's character as a whole. Also, going back to the mystery aspect of this film, remember in Gone Girl how there was that one twist in the film that not only recontextualized how you felt about all the characters, but it made you root for a character to straight up hating a character, and there is a moment like that in Widows, and it is phenomenal. It is something that you may be able to predict, but it's one of those things where you're like, nah, they're not going to do that, and they do, and it's very shocking, and it's really well done, and I really loved the way the twist was done here. It's something where you got to think about it for a little bit, but once it happens, it does make a lot of sense, and I really did like where they ended up going with the twist in this film. It definitely did not play out the way I expected it to, and I really love the way it was done here. Overall, this is easily some of the best writing of the year. I really could go on and on, but I really don't want to say much more about this film. Going to the cinematography, though, this is easily some of the best of the year. I mean, there is some truly master craft I mean, there is some truly masterful shot composition going on here, especially when it comes to certain shots in the film. There's a lot of really great camera work on display. One shot in particular involving this door and what they choose to show you when they choose to show it. I thought was extremely effective. It reminded me, and this gave me a weird comparison, but maybe it's just because I just saw it. It reminded me of 12 Years a Slave when, they didn't show the characters being whipped until the damage was done. They didn't show their backs until after they had been whipped, and there's a very specific choice similar to that in Widows, and in the same way that that was effective, I think it's done just as well, if not more, if not even more effective here, and I really love the way it was done. There's this one tracking shot with Colin Farrell that I think everyone is going to be talking about. Everyone's going to be going crazy about it, and they very well should, because it is a phenomenal shot. I mean, the way that's done, there's a lot of great camera work in this film that's just like that. There's even a shot towards the end of this film that I think if it hadn't have been as expertly crafted as it was, I don't think it would have been as emotional as it was. I mean, the ending of this film, it actually does end on a pretty emotional note, and it really did, not necessarily make me cry, but it definitely did leave an impact on me, and I think, again, it really is credit to the cinematographer here. They really know great shot composition. I was very impressed with the way it was done, but also the action sequences, which there aren't a lot. I will say that right now. This is not an action film. I'm just going to tell you that right now. This is not an action film, but the action scenes that are here are some of the most thrilling of the entire year. The opening scene in particular, the way it's done, the way it's crafted, it's just phenomenal. I love the way they handled it, and the heist scene in question, when that's eventually performed, I mean, it absolutely delivers. It definitely does not disappoint. It does not play out the way you expect it to. It's very raw. It's very harrowing. It really does have you on the edge of your seat, and there's a lot of great scenes like that, and also virtually every other scene that Daniel Kaluuya has. I mean, those scenes in particular are really well shot. There's just some really great camera work overall. Some of the best cinematography, I think, of the entire year. Hans Zimmer's score, as usual, is just so great here. It's very pulse-pounding. It really has you on the edge of your seat, but it also can be very emotional. I don't know if this is the best work I've ever seen from Hans Zimmer, but he always does deliver, and definitely the case here. He always does a great job. In terms of, but the other thing I love about the score is the soundtrack in the movie. I mean, there's some really great music that plays. The one song that we heard in the trailer that is in the film, I really enjoyed the placement of it. I think they handled that very well. But what I loved even more is the song, the Big Easy, I think it's called, or something like that. The Big Unknown. There you go, the Big Unknown. That song for me definitely should be nominated for Best Original Song. I mean, it doesn't come to like the end of the film, but the way it's done, it plays such a great role in the film, and I think it's truly one of the best original songs of the year, and I think it definitely should be nominated. I know this is a completely different topic, but it's definitely something that I really loved about this film. And the editing, like I said, for the most part, I think this film is very well paced. Yes, it can be very slow at times, but for me, I was pretty much riveted throughout the entire film. There really wasn't a point where I was bored. I was a little bit worried about the political stuff at first, but once we did get into it, I actually really enjoyed it a lot. I understood its purpose in the film, but like I said, I do think the film would have been even better if it was just a little bit longer. I think, if we were able to have maybe 20 or 30 minutes more, we could have devoted just a little bit more time to some of these characters, because there is a lot going on in this film. There's a lot of characters to juggle, and they really do pull it off, but I just think that, it could have been even better. However, this is a film that ever since I've seen it, I really do want to see it again, considering the twist and considering the way things do end. I really do think that a lot of these problems may just go away after a second viewing. I could very well see that happening, but as it stands, Widows is a phenomenal film. I really love this film a lot. It has some of the best performances of the entire year. It has a really compelling and interesting plot. It has a really great characters, some really tragic character arcs, but also some really fun moments. It knows when to be emotional, but it also knows when to have fun with itself, and I think it does that very well. It also ties in some really great political and social commentary that I definitely really enjoyed, but it also does, I think, a very good job at you know, telling a great story, and that's what Steve McQueen did such a great job with here. And again, it's credit to Gillian Flynn as well, who I think is also had a very active role in this film. Just everything about Widows is why I love movies. I mean, there's so much great stuff on display here. I think I've pretty much said as much as I possibly could. Widows was a phenomenal film overall, and I'm definitely going to give Widows overall an A. Like I said, I really could see this going to an A+, on a second viewing. Really could, but as it stands, please see this film. It is not getting nearly enough attention. I know it is not doing well in the box office, but trust me, like, if you want to see a really great film this Thanksgiving weekend, go see this film as soon as you can, because it is absolutely worth your time. It deserves your full attention, and I think it is definitely something that you probably aren't ever going to forget. But that's it for my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you guys have seen Widows, let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall. Leave your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.